PBL with a full deck cards. All right, Alec is leading the slides. Take it away, Alec. So I'm at the bottom of that list right there. That's me. That is a picture of me from a long time ago when I was much younger. I taught for 10 years at High Tech High Media Arts, where actually Diana and I were founding teachers together of that school. And then this workshop is one that's near and dear to my heart because I was actually the founding editor of Unboxed. And when we were creating that, well, I'll get into that later. But for the last 5 years, I've been working in professional learning, primarily supporting PBL throughout the state of California through the PBL Leadership Academy. Diana, take it away. We'll go up the list.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Diana Cornejo Sanchez. I'm the Director of Intern and Induction Programs for the High Tech High Teacher Center, which means that I get to work with novice teachers, both earning their credentials, the preliminary and the clear credential as well. Before that, I was a principal at another San Diego charter project-based learning school. And before that, got to dive into some professional learning with large urban school districts and their executive teams at the University of San Diego, and was a teacher for 12 years, actually.
I think Sarah is in another session right now. Alec.
Great. Hey there, I'm Alec Patton. I am the editor of Unboxed. I also make the High Tech High Unboxed podcast. And before that, I taught humanities, high school humanities at High Tech High Chula Vista. And before that, High Tech High North County.
Great. Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so these are Zoom norms, or as someone in an earlier session called them, Zorms. Please be on mute when you're in the large room, but please turn your mic on in the breakout rooms. Please use the chat for questions, comments, and ideas, especially while we're speaking. Diana is monitoring the chat the entire time throughout this. So please know that someone will be looking and reading what you're saying and responding to it. Please remember that your nonverbal signals are so important right now. Nod, show agreement, give thumbs ups, use jazz hands. But I'm going to say that with the other one, the next norm also in mind. That is, if you're on camera, I want to give you explicit permission. If this is your, if this is a time when you need to turn your camera off, if you need to stand up and stretch, if you need to walk around, that is all completely fine. If you have other members of your family who need some love and attention, please give it to them. I can tell you right now, if one of my kids comes flying in this room, I am going to give them a hug or do something to pay attention to them. So if you need to turn your camera off, that is totally okay. And if it's on, we greatly appreciate all human connection right now. All right, Alec, let's go to the next slide. So our project, which you're opting into, hopefully, by being here, is really about sharing practices via cards. Now, I want to sort of go back in time about 12 or 13 years when I was much closer to the age that I was in the picture that you saw earlier. I was actually the founding editor of the Unboxed Journal out of the High Tech High Graduate School of Education. And when we were in our first design session creating that journal, we were asking ourselves how people use these types of resources. And the thing we kept coming back to was people like to tear articles out or like photocopy an article or something like that and give it to a friend. And so what we were thinking was, what if we just did that work for people? Like we made a thing that was really easy to just pass out. And so what that became was these High Tech High unboxed project cards. And we've got a bunch of pictures of the fronts of several of them here. A typical project card is 6 inches by 9 inches. In real life, it's a printed thing. The front of it has an image of student work, typically. And the back of it typically has a variety of writing that helps you get inspired and maybe take that first step in trying out the content that you see on the card. These are the most widely accessed resources that we have at High Tech High, and the single page that has all of the project cards posted, that is typically among our top 2 or 3 most accessed sites among all of the High Tech High pages. We think it's because these are sort of like right-sized to help people get started. It's not too much. It's certainly not too much. It's just enough to sort of give you some inspiration and say, oh, here's an example of what I might like to try. Now, this is an example we're going to try to stand on the shoulders of this example and do something like it, but a little different. This is our sort of learning journey over the next 45 minutes. We're going to try to understand what is a project card. We're going to get into a model critique in some small groups. We're going to try to get comfortable with some of the materials that we've prepared for you to move from like an idea through some drafts into something that we could do the layout for and turn into one of these cards. And then we're going to try to get into that actual ideation and drafting. That's a lot for 45 minutes. We are going to be moving quickly, but I really want to share that this session is intended to help folks get started. And if you would really like to pursue this further, we will take the content that you turn in and help you help it get laid out and ready for publication. For it to get to that point, it would be helpful for you to consider signing up for a tuning protocol on Friday or the exhibition on Friday, or maybe both, because those places will be great chances to share your ideas in that zero draft form or first draft form and get some feedback before you turn it in and say, hey, here's what I'd like to share with the world. Next slide, please, Alec. Okay, so I've shared a little bit of what a project card is. I'm going to drop in the chat right now a few things just so you have some resources also to use. The first thing I'm dropping is the whole slide deck, okay, so that everybody has that. The next thing I'm going to drop in is actually a link that is already in your email, but I want to make sure that everyone has these next two links. Now, these cards are these are things that we give away repeatedly for free around the world. So there's now a lot of these cards. And what we have here, what you're seeing is examples of the PDF of any one of the cards. The second link I sent is the full PDF of all of the project cards. When we all return to our schools after all of this is in the past, if you were to take that PDF and just send it to any local printer, you could print all of the cards yourself. Or if you had one that you really liked, you could just print that page and hand it off to a friend. The left page on any of these PDFs, the left page would be the front of the card and the right page would be the back. Hopefully prior to this session, you were able to scroll through that PDF and take a look at some of the cards and select one that spoke to you. If you didn't do that, you have the links now. By all means, please open them. I do want to say you will get bonus points if the project card that spoke to you was any of the following. Superhero in the Making, which was submitted by Diana. I don't know, when was that? In like 2007, something like that? 8? Who knows? Media Saves the Beach, Blogging is Writing, Life the Book, and Sickness and Health, Syrian Refugee Simulation. These were all project cards that we all submitted long ago, back when we were you know, not in professional learning, but we were teaching in the classroom. And I guess that's a very self-referential way of saying, we really believe in this product. This is something that we've contributed to because we really do believe that by sharing these examples, we've seen how people pick them up and turn them into their own versions and their own ideas. And we certainly hope that when you look at these, you do stand on the shoulders of these and create something that will help others see much further. Now we're going to go to the next slide, and what we're going to do right now is head out of the back one. There we go. We're going to head out of this big session with me talking, and we're going to send you towards breakout rooms. And Alec, Sarah, and we are going to drop in and out of breakout rooms as needed. But what you're doing in your breakout room in a small group is a model critique. Now, the first thing you'll do is introduce yourself. You're going to meet a couple people. If you've been in any of our other sessions, you've probably seen this happen. As you meet people, share what project card you selected and some piece of the card that really spoke to you. whether it was a practice or a particular teacher reflection or a particular student reflection, or maybe a particular type of work that was being displayed. Maybe it illuminated some possibilities for you. Now we're going to ask for one thing to happen, which is that the person whose first name is closest to A in the alphabet, that person's the scribe for your group of 4. And they don't need to take perfect notes, but they should take some notes, okay? And what they're recording is just the things that you appreciate about these cards, because those elements of quality will help us all see some various targets that we're going to aim for as we make our own. All right, so if someone says, what I really appreciate is a personal reflection from a student, then that's telling us, okay, that's a design feature that we really value. So let's consider keeping that and using that in the ones that we create. Are we ready to head out to breakout rooms?
How much time do you want for the breakout rooms, Randy?
Let's do this relatively quickly. Let's make these about 5-6 minutes in a breakout room. Does that seem okay? Now, that's what I was saying also, Alec, Sarah, and we're going to be dropping in and out of breakout rooms. So if you do need assistance, we are probably either there or on our way. Also, just so you know, when you're in the breakout rooms, there is an ask for help button. So if you feel like you're stuck, you can always click the ask for help. That will send a message to Diana, who can then send one of us over to your breakout room. It's sort of like, in the classroom, we can walk over to a table that looks like they would like a little bit of assistance. So when you head to the breakout rooms, we're also gonna broadcast these prompts to you. But you if you have the chat open, you do also have the slide deck as well.
Everyone should be receiving their invites already.
Great. When you get your invite, please head to your breakout rooms. Great. As you're dropping ideas into the chat, it's wonderful if you could also share a bit of, if you would like, you can share the cards that you selected. If you'd like, you could share some of the elements that you appreciated. Okay, so the thing you're seeing on the screen right now is a worksheet that we sent out on the calendar link, and then also I think I sent it to you yesterday as well. Great, I'm seeing the chat start to scroll right now. This is fantastic. Love seeing that, seeing that students have a chance to share their point of views, etc. I'm gonna just drop into the chat this worksheet. If you don't already have it, I do wanna make sure that everyone has access to this. So the Google Doc that I just dropped in is the document that you see split up on the screen right there. There's some explanatory text on the first page, and then there's boxes that you could, should, or might decide to fill out. Now, the cards that we're going to make are going to be a little bit different than a typical project card. And that's because I think the requests that we've seen coming in, I think those requests have really centered on how do I do this, or what might X or Y or Z look like through distance learning. And so that a common example has been like, hey, I really want to do exhibitions still, but I just don't really know what those look like in a distance learning world. And hopefully over the last day and a half or over the last 6 weeks, as you've been thinking about how you're leading for PBL in your own communities, you're starting to generate your own ideas of like, okay, I feel like I'm taking a few steps forward. Now, I want to share as a bit about the sort of like the practices you might select, even as we start to think about this format or this worksheet. Last year, as we were working in the PBL Leadership Academy with a similar cohort of teachers, we got some interesting feedback as we focused on documenting PBL curriculum. And the feedback was consistently, by having to document my PBL curriculum, it made me rethink how I create PBL curriculum. And that is part of the sort of like, I guess that's sort of like the part of the theory of change that we have with this, is that sometimes folks think they need to have a perfect idea before they should share it. And actually, what I would advocate for is by going through the process of sharing your idea, you will start to perfect it. I really do feel like I've learned that in several different ways. When I was much, much younger, I was involved in the editorial and publishing world and had the opportunity to edit and write several books. And I often felt that at the end of writing a book, I finally knew enough to write that book. Okay. And we saw that this plays out repeatedly through teachers as well. When they start documenting their core practices, they're actually not sure how core they are or how confident they are and all of that stuff. And by the time they've drafted it and revised it several times, they're like, now I really know it. And so I really want to sort of like open the floodgates here and have you engage with this without that sense of hesitation that you have to be an expert before you start documenting. Now we are gonna send you back into the breakout rooms again so that you can sort of tinker with this sheet and try to figure out which parts of this feel comfortable and which parts feel like, hey, I'm not really sure what I might or how I might use this. Technically or logistically, the way you should use this is you should make your own copy of it. If you use Google Docs, just make a copy in your own Google Drive. If you prefer Word or OpenOffice or something like that, just download this document as a Word document or an OpenOffice document. You want to turn this into something that you can personally edit, okay? And as you go into it, you'll see that there's top-level components. These are required, like we need to know your core practice name. But then there's also optional components. And as you dive deeper and deeper into this document, you'll see there's also driving questions to help you personalize this. So if you really want to focus on, say, like career technical education, or if you really want to focus on supporting students with IEP status, there's questions there to help you think about, oh, here's something I might want to add so that I can really personalize this to my own area of expertise or my passion. The questions we have on the screen are ones that we hope you can think about in a breakout room. And again, Alec and Sarah and we're going to head into the rooms right away just to see how we can support you. But this graphic organizer, we want you to think about, what does it offer you? How might you use it? And what might your starting point be? And I want to also be the first person to just like really give you license to start on this document anywhere where you feel comfortable.
Randy, how many minutes would you like for the breakout rooms?
Let's do another, what was that last one, like 6-ish minutes? We'll do something in that range and then I'll chat back to you if we feel like, if you feel like you need more time in this, we can chat back. Or just so you know, the last section we have in this workshop is spent more on ideation of like what you might write. This is more familiarizing yourself with the document itself. Welcome back.
I remember this time.
Welcome back, everybody. I want to share a couple of things that came up in the breakout room that I was in. If you are having questions about how to create these types of things or what is the right thing to create, this is a great time to ask those questions. Just please send them in via the chat. So a couple of things came up. One thing is, or one of the ideas that came up was the examples that we sent out are project cards, and they do share inspiration and ideas from large-scale projects. But what we're asking for you to think about is actually something that's on a different scale, which is instead of a whole project, to instead think about a single practice that you could focus on during this time. And I think for some folks, that might be great because it allows you to retain your sort of like PBL identity even while you're doing distance learning, and you might be using very different curriculum than you ever would in a classroom. And for others, we're hoping it's like an entry point, and the example we were talking through in our breakout room was like, hey, if you would like to try exhibitions, this is an opportunity to sort of write out like, well, what might an online exhibition look like? What are different formats for that? Like, could I do that with digital portfolios? Could I do that with student videos made on their phones? Could I do that by having kids take pictures of their work and email them to one another? Another topic that came up in ours was okay, if I'm not writing a whole project, that's great. What if I just want to make sure that I can try critique practices with my students? Well, critique practices in a classroom might look one way, but critique practices at home through distance learning might really look another way. And so in that box that asks you to name a practice and to write a description of it, you might even write out like a step-by-step description of like, if I want my kids, my students to critique each other's work, here's a flow that I think I'm going to try following. And just sort of reflecting back on what I was trying to say at the start of this session, this is the way that we're hoping that documentation leads to perfection of ideas, where you don't need a perfect idea to start and then you document. Instead, you start documenting your ideas, and by documenting them, you refine them as you go. By writing them out, it helps you shape your thought. It's sort of like the difference between writing to communicate and writing to learn. The first part of this is going to be writing to learn, where you're writing your ideas out, and as you go, you're actually learning about the content that you're writing. So those were some of the ideas I want to bring up from the session, the breakout room that I was in. If you
sorry,
Diana, sorry, Sarah.
I was just going to say, I really enjoyed visiting some of the breakout rooms. And one of the things that came up in ours was understanding really the purpose of the card. And this group did a beautiful job of answering their own question. They came up with essentially like the purpose is meeting your needs, whether to curate your work, to advertise your work, to get clear on your work, to clarify it for families and community. But there was a little bit of a request. Could you clarify one more time kind of the way you see the purpose of the card, so that we can build on that?
Everything you just said, honestly, you nailed it. Yes. And you named something that you named a group that's really important that I haven't said, which is the other half of the teaching team during distance learning, which is community and families. And so if we're sending curriculum out to students and we're asking them like to do something like, you know, in a week, you're going to take a picture of what you did and share it with somebody else. What I'm hoping here is by writing this out, writing the steps out of your practice, you'll get a better sense of what the practice really should look like for you. And you'll create a resource that you could send home to all of the families and say, hey, here's a one-pager that helps you see the steps. And I know that on this call right now, like we have some people who support math instruction at a larger scale. Hopefully we'll be creating some resources that you might pass around inside of your own communities and say like, hey, I wrote out this idea of how to do, you know, internet-based exhibitions, or I wrote out this idea of how to do field work or expert visits to class. And I have it now on this like one pager. So you can share that maybe with families, but also you could share that with other members of your own school communities.
Fabulous. Thanks, Randy. That's pretty much what that group came up with. And I felt like they were right on the money. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that honestly, over the years of being at HTH, one of the key pieces that we've seen is that in order to help people do project-based learning, it really helps if you can say what it is. And unfortunately, project-based learning is a term that doesn't have an established definition. So living in that world of ambiguity can be great for like innovation, but it can also make it hard to help other teachers or help parents or help students know what they're supposed to do at any given point in this process. And so what we're hoping happens in these cards is that you get some clarity of like, well, here's how I would really like to see this practice really work for my class or for my community. So what our plan is right now is actually to send you back again to the breakout rooms. I wasn't a great basketball player, but I love the give and go. So this is a lot of give and go where like you go in, you come back, give, go back in again. We're gonna have you go back to breakout rooms again with hopefully a little bit more knowledge at this point of like, what are we thinking? And we want to have folks start thinking, what are your first instincts? What are your impulses of like, okay, well, if I'm gonna share a practice, here's one I might share. And please know, again, what you decide to share should be something that really speaks to you, and you do not need to be an expert in it. By working through the sharing process, you will develop your expertise. Diana, please send us.
Sorry, do you want 6 minutes again, Randy?
Let's go a little less because we're at 2:42 right now.
Okay,
Just so
how
we're
much?
conscious of people's
You
time.
want 4?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, you all should get your invites.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I have the wrong thing open on my screen right now. Okay, I want to invite Alec back so he can share his screen as well. Is he here somewhere? There we go. Let's scroll past these. Let's stay right here at that one. Go back, please. Okay, so I want to share something that happened in the breakout room where I was, which is that I want to illuminate and elevate one of the ideas that struck me as like particularly rich, and we started talking about it in this sense, and I want to name that, and then I do want to respect everyone's time and allow you to move on to whatever else is happening. So Rocio was sharing that she really feels that a starting point, I'm sharing her idea. I hate that I'm speaking for her, but a starting point might be to help students record really what's happening from their perspective during this time about how life has changed. And we started talking through, well, in one question is, well, how do you mean? Does that mean podcasts? Does that mean oral histories? And by getting more specific, the person who has the idea can start to feel out which of those feels most relevant to them as an educator. Because making a podcast is different than making an oral history, and recording audio, recording video. There's lots of different ways you can approach the same sort of initial impulse, which was that she seemed interested in the idea of helping students record what's actually happening in their lives during this time. And we started to also talk through, like, how would you facilitate that as a teacher, knowing that it's going to be done over distance learning, not done the way you might do it in a classroom where everyone gets to see each other every day for an hour or something like that. So I guess that's a illustration or a long walk towards highlighting the first idea here, which is that once you have that initial impulse of an idea, the way to push it is by trying out different specific versions of it. Alec, let's skip past this stuff, please. We'll move forward about 4 or 5 slides. There we go. So this is, if you're thinking in the sense of like homework or something like that, if you would like to contribute, and we really, really, really hope that you do want to contribute, if you would like to contribute ideas that can get published in Unboxed as a PBL core practice card that will help support you, your families, your community, and other teachers during this time, the way to get started is, after this workshop, create a 0 draft. A 0 draft is just a brain dump, okay? It's something that is before a first draft. When you've got a 0 draft, let's start thinking about what a first draft might look like. Some places to get further support on this would be to join any one of the tuning protocols on Friday morning, or join the exhibition on Friday. And I want to also be very clear on this one. The best thing to bring to a tuning protocol is a piece of an intentionally incomplete idea. The best thing to say in a tuning protocol is, I've got this idea, and here are my questions. All right, Alec, let's go to the next slide, please. Those are our email addresses. Please stay in touch. I'm actually hopping over to the next workshop pretty soon, which is the office hours workshop, where it's really just pure questions. So again, if you'd like to join that one also, that's another, we can do that. I'm gonna put in the chat a exit card. You have hopefully already seen this exit card, but we really appreciate you copying and pasting this link. And yes, Nadia, I see your question. We'll put our emails in the chat as well. Please email us. So please stay in touch. I know that the end of a Zoom call can be a little awkward. People aren't sure when it's okay to sign off. If you feel like you've gotten your fill for right now and you're ready to step away from the screen, please please do. You can always chat us a goodbye. We'll stick around and answer questions however we can. And then in about 8 or so minutes, we are going to open up the office hours link. If anyone would like to join that and they're not currently enrolled, just email me and I'll send you the link to that. I don't know if I can have all of those open at the same time right now.